Dennis here with doityourselfdennis.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to box in a window. And there's a couple of things, tools you're going to need before you get started. It's nice to have a jigsaw, a miter saw, preferably with a 12-inch blade versus a 10-inch. A 10-inch will work, but a 12-inch would work probably a little better. A table saw, and a speed square is nice, pencils, tape measure, just your general tools. And then there's a couple of things that you're going to want to keep in mind before you get started or when you get started. Like on this particular window here, I mean, you could just box it all in, but it wouldn't turn out looking very good, because you've got a wider gap on this side between the window and your rough framing versus on this side. So if you put your wand by up there, you've got about a 1/4 inch reveal on this side, whereas on this side you're going to end up with 3/4 of an inch, and it actually doesn't even cover up the whole window frame. So you're going to want to take that into consideration. Another thing that you'll want to look at is this rough framing is a little crooked. So let me get on this side. So if you took a square and you put it up against there's a gap. I mean, it's tied up against in the back, but there's an 1/8 of an inch gap there. So you're going to want to keep that in mind. Take all that into consideration if you're wanting a really good job. So another thing you'll want to keep in mind would be, I don't know if you can tell it in the video, but there's just about 1/8 of an inch between the rough framing and the window itself on the bottom. When you get up to the top, it's not as critical on this window because there's not much difference. There's about a 1/4 of an inch difference. Let me show you another window and you can see a little more of what I'm talking about. Okay, if you look down here, you can see you got about a 1/4 of an inch on this window. You got about a 1/2 inch at the top. So you see the difference? So that's something you're going to want to keep in, just keep an eye on. So you're going to have to build this out at the top. So let me go back to the other window and we'll get started. Okay. To get started, we're going to put what's called a window stool on here first. That's what you're going to start with, is the window stool. And so your window stool is going to be a little wider than your window trim. So what you're going to do is, I know you're going to have to measure the width of your trim, which I'm going to use 2 1/4 inch trim, and you're going to generally get about a 1/4 of an inch reveal. Like say if your trim is up, or your boxing is up here like this, so your trim is going to start about a 1/4 of an inch back from here. So it's going to start here, so you're going to go over 2 1/4 inches. So if you got 2 1/4 plus a 1/4, it makes 2 1/2. So where your board would be, you would want to be 2 1/2 inches from there, plus normally your window stool sticks out just a little further than the actual trim itself. So I always add a 1/2 inch. So we got 2 1/2 now, plus another 1/2 inch makes 3 inches. So basically from this edge to you're going to make a mark 3 inches. So we'll just take this and put it up against there, and we're going to make a mark at 3 inches. Now the other side is going to be a little more difficult. So what you're going to do is figure out you can take your board and put it up against there and kind of get an idea of how the board's going to sit in there. You can take your square and put it up against the window And you've got your 1/4 inch reveal right here. So you just hold your board there, and that'll give you a mark to start with. So you're gonna make a mark at the edge of this board here. So it's in there straight. So we made our mark, and now we're going to measure 3 inches from there. So I have my tape measure on 1, so I'm going to measure to 4. Now what we'll do is we'll measure from the mark we made over here to the mark we made here. And that's going to give us how long we need to make our window stool. So I'm going to put my tape measure on 1 and measure over to here, and we got about 37 1/4. So we're going to take the inch away, so it's actually 36 1/4 because I had my tape measure on 1. So let me go get that cut, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cut our window stool. And so let's get our measurement. It's 36 1/4. Let me get my eyes on so I can see. Something that's a good idea if you use a miter saw much. I've got this on a 1x12. It's a good idea to clamp it down, keep it from falling off. So let's get this cut. Okay, so now let's go back into the other room, and I'll show you how we're going to. Okay, so we've got our board cut to length, so we're going to just bring it in here, and we're going to line it up on the marks that we made. And then we're going to make a mark on here as to where we need to cut it at. And you could actually cut it just a hair short, so you don't have any trouble fitting it in there. So let's go back into the other room, and then we'll cut this piece out. Okay, so what we need to do, the window stool sticks out past the wall. On this one, we're going to make it stick out 1 inch out past the wall so that our trim sits on top of it, gives us a little bit of extra room. So go to the marks that you made, take your speed square. You're going to start out at 1 inch, make a mark, and then draw a line. And then you're going to draw a line on that 1 inch mark. And then do the same thing at the other end. Again, start with the 1. Make a mark. Can you see that okay? Okay, and so we're going to cut these 2 pieces out. So first I'm going to route it. That's something I didn't tell you needed, but really it turns out for a much better job if you've got a router. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. My cords are all tangled up, so I got them untangled. So let me route this. I usually go back over it with a little sandpaper, just kind of take the rough edge off. Just kind of smooth it up a little bit. If you notice, I didn't route all the way back because we only have to route back to that line. So now we're ready to cut it. So we're going to take our jigsaw and cut. Again, take your sandpaper, get the rough burrs off. You might even sand underneath. Get the rough burrs off of there. All right, so now we're ready to go back to the room. Okay, we're ready to put this piece in. Something I want to point out is this doesn't go all the way back. It's not going all the way back. You would really probably need a 1x8. I used a 1x6 just to save on some lumber. What we're going to end up doing, there's a gap behind here. So we're going to put a little piece of trim on here to take up that space. So what you're going to do is you're going to set this in there and you're going to line it up on the marks that you made earlier, and you're ready to nail it. So let me nail it. Okay, so now we're going to put the top in next. So you just get a measurement of how long it needs to be, and where this framing is a little crooked, I'm going to measure at the back because it's narrower at the back. So you measure to your narrowest, and it's about 32.25. And out in the front, we've got about 32 3/8. So we're going to cut it at 32.25 and put that up in there. And then you're going to measure out. So you need to measure out. It's about 5 1/8 at this end. And these are going to vary some. We got 5 and, yeah, down here we got 5 1/8. So we're good. But I've done the other windows in this house. This is one of the last ones. I've got 2 left. And some of it's varied, 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. So you're going to want to take that into consideration. So we'll go ahead and cut it to length, and then we're going to rip it down to the 5 1/8. Okay. These little table saws, if you do much work like this, they work great to take on a job site. They're not very heavy. I think this thing only weighs 45 pounds or somewhere around that. And I actually put some boards on the bottom so I can clamp it to some sawhorses, but I'm using my sawhorses on somewhere else, so I've just got it laying on the floor. And it's not that big a deal. It doesn't take but a minute to rip this through. So you're going to set the length of your cut or width of your cut to 5 1/8, and you're going to want to make sure we pre-painted this wand by so that it's a whole lot easier to paint off than it is on. So just be sure and don't cut your painted face off, because we didn't paint the back side. So let's go ahead and cut this down. Brand new blade, but it sure wasn't very, it seemed very sharp. So anyways, okay, so this board's just going to go up in here like that. You want to make sure it fits right. It fits good. We're good there and there. So let me get my nailer and we'll nail it up there. The reason this fits is because this overhang is what makes it so it doesn't fit back here. So like I said, I could have bought some 1x8 and made it cut wider and got it all the way up against the window, but this will work for now. Let me get my board up here. tell you something I just noticed is we got a difference from here to here. So I'm going to build this down a little bit so that it covers it all up. So, you know, it's just another thing that you want to keep an eye on. I can actually see the crack of the window on this side where I can't on this side. So let me figure out what you want to do is figure out what your gap is up here. All right, to figure out how far we need to shim this out some. So to figure out how much we need to shim it out, what you're going to do is take a board and put it up there, and you can measure down. We've got about a ½ inch. And then put your board on this side and measure up. We've got about not quite 3/4 inch. So the difference being about 1/4 inch. So we're going to shim this down 1/4 inch. So let me get a piece of shim, cut it, and put it up in there. All right, we've gone and cut us a 1/4 inch shim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it and tack it up in there. Take our board and put it back up in there. That looks much better. So let's go get a nail in it. Put one down this end. Then we're going to take another shim and put it in at the top. What I did was cut a shim 1/8 inch thick to put at the top. So, all right, so now we're ready to put the sides on. So we'll start at this side here. And what you're going to do is measure up. It's about 44 3/8. And you want to measure on the inside and then measure on the outside. See how close you are. They're both pretty close. Something you can do if, say, your framing is a little off. If you're narrower at the back, just go ahead and cut your board straight, because it really won't make any difference, because you can take a shim and actually pull this piece down to make it meet. So let's go ahead and get this cut. 44 3/8. Then we're going to get that cut, and then you're going to need to cut the width. So we had 5 1/8, and it's about 5 3/16 here at the bottom. So let me go get our piece cut and we'll put that in. Okay, something you can do, I was talking earlier about how if it's a different width at the top than it is at the bottom, a 1/16 inch isn't all that critical, but like say if it was 1/8 inch and you wanted to make it be right all the way, so just say 5, you know, make your mark 5 there and say 5 1/8 here. And then just draw you a line. From one end to the other. And then just run it through the table saw with it, you know, just what you would do is you just run it actually like this, but run it through like that. But I think we'll be okay with the 5 1/16 on that up there, or just that 1/16 of an inch. I think it'll be fine. So let me go ahead and cut this. Okay, so remember, we were going to have to build this side out a little bit. So what you want to do is you can measure over, if we're going to come back 1/4 of an inch from this edge of the window frame. So here at the bottom we've got about 1 inch and 9/16. And we've got about 1 inch and 9/16 at the top. So to build it out, you're going to take 1/4 of an inch away from that. So that's going to give you 1 inch and 5/16. And then the thickness of your wand bies was another 3/4. So together, the inch and then the 3/4, or the 1/4 inch plus 3/4, it's going to make 1 inch. So just make your shims at 9/16 of an inch, your thickness. So I'm going to go cut some shims at 9/16. All right, so what we did is I cut some shims, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our shims and just tack them up in there. Now we're ready to put our board in. And it's a good idea to check all this before you actually cut it, or put your, make sure everything fits right. So you got a nice 1/4 inch reveal now here. So we're just going to nail it in the back though. I'll show you why here in a minute. So if you remember right, it wasn't straight on. This framing wasn't. Now we put our square on. So in order to get that out square, we're going to put a little shim behind there. So we're going to put a shim actually between the shim we had behind there and another regular shim. And so that's going to bring us out to where we want it to be. And now we're going to nail the outside part. And then you would just continue on up, do the same thing on this shim, and do the same thing on this shim. And then we'll be ready to start the other side. Alright, so now we've got our shims in, and I've got it nailed, so we're ready to cut them. Cut our shims. Might need to hold the shim in there. Just score it a little bit, and you should be able to break it. Same. Okay, so that's that side. Now we're ready to do the other side. So again, you're just going to get your measurement. And we got about 45, 44, and 5/16. Yep. Then we go get that cut, and we'll be ready to put that in. All right, so now we're ready to put our last piece in. So you notice this, the framing was pretty square on this side versus the other side. So if you put it up in there, you got the nice, about a 1/4 inch return. It's about even all the way up. Get our nails in. So there you got nice even all the way around, and that's what you're looking for. Actually, you see how this is a little gap right here? So what we're going to do is take a little shim and put it in there, and it'll pull that down. So let me see if I got a little piece of shim or something. Okay, so that's all drawn down tight. Got your good joint there. So remember at the beginning of the video I talked about making sure you had enough room for your for your trim, so that your trim sits on here right. We built this all out, so your trim's going to sit on there just like that. You got about a 1/2 inch on this side and 1/4 inch over here. But you got to figure all that in when you're trying to put all this together. Okay, so that's all there is to boxing in a window or installing jamb extensions. That's what some people call them, jamb extensions. There's not a whole lot to it. Just there's some things you need to watch out for as far as making sure it's square and got the right reveal and everything. Thanks for watching, and check out my other videos at doityourselfdennis.com.